honest to God, cannot tell if this is straight. I'm really sorry if it's a weird angle. I tried, but again, I'm using my phone and a stand that is really difficult to maneuver. So if we're slightly off, I apologize. Otherwise, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Bam and welcome to my channel. Today is a wrap-up for the first 4 months of the year. I'm doing it this way because generally I don't read a lot, so there's not really enough for me to constitute doing a wrap-up every month, but I figure with kind of my reading speed picking up with doing this channel and my bookstagram and stuff, that I could do at least 4-month wrap-ups to kind of, you know, still talk about the books that I read and kind of give some extra thoughts that I might not have given in reading vlogs or if I just read them separate to that. But, you know, a lot of these books I did read within reading vlogs, and yeah, so we'll start with January, where I only read one book, but it was Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey Mckiston. This was a decent book to start the year off with. Before this I had read The Love Hypothesis, so I was kind of on like a bit of a romance sort of trajectory, and obviously this is an LGBT book. This basically follows Alex, who is the like president of the United States son, and then Henry, who is the Prince of England. It was marketed as an enemies to lovers, but it's not, because they like kiss in chapter 4 and then they're just having like sex for the rest of it, which, you know, could have been a bit more slow burn, but it was a thing, I guess. I think I rated this 3.75, I think, but I think upon like general reflection I would maybe take that down to 3.5. It wasn't like the greatest thing ever written, and it wasn't like an amazing book, but it was kind of good for what it was. I think it could have been shorter, and kind of the only character I liked a lot was Henry and the extras. I didn't really like Alex a lot in terms of like a narrative voice. I really could have done without him, but I mean, just less of him, you know. I think it would have been fun if we got a few more like, if we got like Henry point of view chapters, but maybe I'm biased, I don't know. Either way, it was a decent book to start the year off with, but I don't think it really earned a lot of the hype that I saw it get. Obviously it's a nice read, it's a nice like LGBT read, and it's really kind of a good one if you want it to be like your first, but for me it just kind of didn't live up to a lot of the hype that people gave it, and that might have been just because of my preferences as a reader, but also just because of how it was kind of, I guess, misdiagnosed as a book in terms of it being labelled an enemies to lovers when it really wasn't. Yeah, this was the book that I read in January. And then I don't actually, well, I own a physical copy, but it's behind my Dreamcatcher album, so I'm not gonna get it out. But in February I only listened to one audiobook because it was a very slow month for me and I had a lot going on with a new semester starting, but I listened to the audiobook for The Maze Runner and I rated that 3 stars, I think. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more had I read it physically, but I just didn't want to damage my already relatively damaged copy by like scribbling in it and stuff, so I kind of left myself to an audiobook. But I do have like ADHD and stuff, so it was really kind of difficult for me to really focus, because even when I was listening I had a tendency to like daydream. The narrator was definitely interesting. He gave Newt an Irish accent, which was wild to listen to. He really gave it his all. It wasn't the best accent I'd ever heard, but it also wasn't the worst. So I'll give him credit where credit is due, but I would question that creative decision a little bit, quite frankly. But yeah, that was a relatively basic, because it was a reread as well, so I didn't really kind of pay attention as much as I probably could or should have, and that's kind of on me. But I rated that 3 stars and that was okay. March, where I had one good book and then a book that you will all be tired of hearing me talk about. So, this wasn't the first book I read. However, I'm going to talk about it first because I will go on a slightly longer winded rant about the next one. So, one of the books I read in March was Heavenly Bodies by Amani Eriyu. I have a whole vlog and longer review for this if you want to watch those. If I remember, I'll put them in the card. Otherwise, they are not that far back on my channel, I promise. But I rated this a 4 stars. This basically follows a girl called Alara as she is escaping her country from like war, as a star has fallen down to kill her, basically, and decided just to like enslave all her people instead. She escapes to her neighboring country called Helios, where the royal family take her in, and from there she essentially trains with the prince. And, you know, it's a little enemies to lovers, they fall in love kind of situation. It's pretty funky. The ending was insane. I will say that. It was wild. And I am really excited for the second one to come out. We've been getting little snippets on Instagram and I'm kind of buzzing. Also, the cover is really pretty. And I absolutely, like, destroyed this in terms of writing in it. This was the first book that I kind of did written annotations in, because for this one and Love Hypothesis, I wrote on the tabs that I put in there because I wasn't quite ready to annotate in, but I was really excited about this one, so I did a lot of scribbling, and yeah, I really enjoyed this read. There were a couple of things I could I definitely already talked about, so I won't really reiterate too many points, but I think generally structure could have used some work and length could have been snipped down just a tad, but overall it was a 4-star read and I really enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to see what Hermione writes next. So now I know you're all tired of hearing me talk about the Spanish love deception. However, as this being a wrap up, I have to talk about it, but this will be the last time I talk about it, except for my reading vlog where I'm taking this to a charity shop tomorrow and I'm getting rid of it, and the only time you will hear me talk about it again will be in January when I'm talking about the worst books I read this year. So, The Spanish Love Deception, the book that is so hyped on TikTok, it's really kind of undeserved. I'm so sorry if you liked this book, but I'm going to question your tastes just a little bit. Please be aware that everything I say is mostly joking, but I did hate this book. Basically, this is supposed to follow Catalina as she's going to go to a wedding in Spain for her family, but like her ex is there and she just like flubs talking to her mum saying she's got a boyfriend, and then for 200 pages of a 500-page book, we have Catalina being an absolute child and refusing to take help when it is offered to her. Yeah. I reached like chapter 12 and I don't even think we were in Spain yet. We might have been, but I don't remember reading anything about Spain. And I got basically 200 pages into this stupid thing. Like, it was absurd how slow the build-up of this was and how annoying Catalina was. She read like a 16-year-old girl, and as a 23-year-old woman, she should not read like that. Yeah. So I DNF'd this, if you can't tell by the way the tabs stop in this front quarter. But I stopped because I could not stomach any of this anymore. It was just annoying. Like, Aaron was the only decent character and he lost my respect when I skipped ahead to read some other sections. But, like, Catalina was the worst narrative voice I think I ever possibly read. And, like, this was the first book I have DNF'd in my life. Usually when I'm reading books, if I get bored, I shelf them and then I pick them back up later. But this, I actively just decided, no, I don't want to finish this and I'm going to get rid of it. Like, I don't do that with books. Like, sometimes I'll buy a book and then not read it and then get rid of it because I know I'm not going to read it. But, like, actively starting a book and then not finishing it. How? Basically. Yeah, pretty much it was bad, you know? It does not live up to any of the hype, and the hate to love is really superficial because it's very obvious from the get-go that Aaron does not hate her. It's very one-sided and kind of pointless, and it really does just make Catalina read like a child, and I don't like that. Also, I think I mentioned this before, but the breaking point for me was the whole auction sequence, because quite frankly, that just gave me the ick. I really don't understand why that was made as a funny thing, because I get if it was just jokey, but I just feel like selling people for dates gives me a really bad implication. And you know, Aaron was very, very clearly uncomfortable throughout the whole thing, and the whole sequence was played for giggles, and I didn't like that. And then they literally didn't mention it again, and they went dancing. So, you know, questionable decisions were made on that front, and you know, questionable decisions were made through the entire like first quarter of this book. So, you know, then when I did DNF it, I had heard very interesting things about the smut. So my roommate and I skipped ahead because we wanted to see if some of the lines that we'd heard were real. They were real, and I cannot believe I read them with my own two eyes. Who thinks that's sexy? And who wants that from sex? Like, I read smut. I've read really good smut, especially in some fanfiction. Some fanfiction writers can do that shit really, really well. But this, I was uncomfortable. And, like, not in the, I feel like I'm intruding on a sweet moment kind of awkward or uncomfortable, but I mean, like, I cannot believe I'm reading these, and I cannot believe people say these things. But also, all of the dialogue in this feels really weird. Some of it feels really natural, but others, it's like, did you read this out loud, and did it sound normal? Because I have to know if people really just genuinely don't read aloud their dialogue, because that's something I do, because I really need to check if a human being would say something the way that they would say it. The smut in this was not it. I'm sorry for anybody who found it good, but like, why did you like that? So, you know, and also, you know, as Aaron at the start was interesting and he was cool, and I kind of related to him in terms of like just being very blunt as a person, but then we get to the smut and he's just weird, and I'm like, you're not a good character anymore. I'm sorry you've lost all of your brownie points. But yeah, I hated this book, and I'm getting rid of it, and the only time you'll ever hear me talk about it again will be at the end of the year. And I never want to see this again. And anybody else who hated it, please talk to me, because I have to know that I'm not the only one that hated this book. And also that I'm not the only one that got tired of hearing about Aaron's blue eyes. I cannot believe this book is real, and I cannot believe someone let it be published. We're moving on now. So April was a relatively decent month for me. I say that. I read 4 manga. So technically I read 4 books, but they were all manga. So I didn't read lots of words. But to be fair, it's better than nothing. And I, you know, found a manga that I really liked, and I own them all now. You can kind of see them down there. There they are. But I read 7 Deadly Sins, Volume 1 and 2. And this is, by technicalities, kind of a reread, because this is the first time I've read the manga, but I watched the first season of the anime. I'm on season 3 now. And yeah, I liked the anime when I watched it like years ago, and I wanted to pick up the manga, so I did. So far it's pretty like close to the anime, and like I love the characters still. But I hear that it does kind of go off a bit, so I'm interested to kind of pick up the rest of the volumes. I know there's a lot of them, and kind of see where everything goes. So this follows Elizabeth, who is the princess of Leonis, and she's looking for the 7 Deadly Sins, who are a bunch of warriors who got like banished from their kingdom for being accused of treason. But they don't actually know what happened that day. And turns out the good guys are actually the bad guys. Are we surprised? No. Yeah. It's like pretty simple. Deanne's like one of my favorite characters. I love her. And yeah. On my Instagram, I have like highlights of my commentary when reading my manga, because I like to take pictures of kind of my favourite panels or just like make comments. It's kind of like my way of annotating without actually annotating in them, you know? So follow my Instagram. Yeah, so these were 2 of the volumes that I read in April. And then the other manga that I read was Tokyo ESP, volumes 1 and 2, and I liked these so much that I picked up the other 5 volumes that I didn't own, because I owned up to volume 3, but I haven't read 3 yet. It's on my pile of to read books. I might read it in a couple of weeks, but I read these. I'm enjoying myself. I don't plan to watch the anime though, because I've seen reviews of it and apparently it's not as good as the manga, so I don't plan on watching that. However, I am going to read the rest of it. With the English versions, it's 2 volumes crammed into like 1 book, which is why it's so thick. So I have the 8 volumes, which is technically 16. And this essentially follows a girl called Rinka who gets like a fish absorbed into her, and it gives her powers. She can basically go through surfaces, and the first time we meet her, she's falling through the floor of her bedroom into the flat below her. And she meets a boy called Azuma, my favourite character. I love him and I would protect him with my life. And he can teleport, and the teleportation in this is drawn really interestingly. It's kind of like an ink spill, and I quite like that kind of artistic choice that we get out of that. And yeah, the characters in this, we get a thief, and I always forget her name and I feel really bad, but she's kind of like an anti-hero. She's like a friend and an ally, but she's also grumpy and not nice, but like I love her. And we've got a few like antagonistic characters that are really connected to Azuma, and I'm really interested to kind of see where everything goes. I think I understand from some of the blurbs that I've read on the other volumes that there's a time skip after the 3rd or 4th volume. I think it's the 3rd, because the symbols and stuff change on the spines. So yeah, I'm just like, Azuma's my favorite character and I would die for him, and I'm really excited to basically binge through the rest of this now that I own all of the volumes. So yeah, that was what I read from January to April. It wasn't a lot. It's probably about the amount that some people read in a month, but I am a very slow reader and I am not ashamed of that. I mean, it took me 3 weeks to read that, and the vlog for that went out today, hence the same outfit as the end clip of that. Go watch that, because I will talk about this book in a few months' time. Just know that I love it. Go follow my Instagram. Hopefully I have edited something in here, otherwise I look like a fool. But I post relatively regularly on there, so you'll see me a bit more on there than you would on my YouTube, just because filming videos takes a lot of time. But summer is coming up, I have a few assignments due, and then I am home free, aside from thinking about my dissertation, which is terrifying. Yeah, so follow my Instagram, like and subscribe if you would like. Give me book recommendations, give me video recommendations, the usual kind of stuff. Talk to me about the books that I read, if you read any of the similar ones, or if you had different thoughts to me, if you had the same thoughts. Just, yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next week with a reading vlog, hopefully. Yay. Bye.